Nope, didn't work.
All right,
that didn't go as planned. Okay, I can go now?
Yep.
You can go now.
To a great start. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is another episode of BAM the Pod. We are the Bad Action Movie Brothers. I'm here with my brother Brian, but we're also here with some friends. And Brian has a few things he'd like to say. Go ahead, Brian.
I just thought I would introduce our friends. Well, a few of them. Some of them you've heard on our podcast before. I guess all of them, just not at the same time. So we have our friends Charlton and Caleb from the Frickin' Frack Show, who we did our Terrifier interview with a couple weeks ago, which was super fun. And then we have Curtis, who has his own podcast, which is directly related to this movie.
Nope, not at all.
Oh.
Not in any way, shape, or form. Really.
What's the name of your podcast, and tell us about it?
Tesseract TV. We talk about all the Disney Plus, Marvel shows right now. So we're still relatively new in the game, but we did all the WandaVision, and now we're in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Talking about that good old Bucky action.
All the mother boxes, right?
Yep, sure. We can say there's some other boxes in there to please you, Brian.
Okay.
Brian, you had a new name for this group. Did you want to? We're not calling it BAM anymore.
Well, I don't know. I just thought we're having fun doing some of these streams. We're recording them in advance, but if people like them, maybe sometime we'll try to do some live streams where we could interact with people. But there might only be one person, we could interact with our mom. She'd hear from us from this week if she.
I'm pretty sure she does not listen to our podcast.
I'm pretty sure I told her she probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I thought if we do these live streams, maybe we call it "Bang Our Friends" because we're with our friends and they're all bangers.
Yeah,
it's true.
You can take that to mean whatever
you don't know
you
what
want.
I be doing.
Bam and friends. That way it's clean.
I don't know what Curtis does. It's true.
Yes. So we're going to be having a lot of voices and ideas. This is great. We got some video going here too. I guess we should tell people what we're going to be talking about because we haven't mentioned that either. We're going to be talking about the Synder Cut Justice League drop. I guess it's been out for a little while now. So probably at this point, the people who are going to watch it have watched it, which means I don't think there'll be too many spoilers. But fair warning, we're going to be talking about a movie, people. So if you haven't watched it and you're worried about us talking about it, maybe this is not the podcast for you because we're gonna give away some details here. So that should be fun. And Brian, you're probably the in-house DC expert. That's what I'm thinking. Although I don't know, Charlton, I didn't have a chance to get your comic background. Are you a comic guy as well, or?
I am a comic guy. I have read a handful of comics. I haven't gone, crazy with it. I'm a Goosebump book collector, so I'm more of that than a comic book collector. I do have my favorite comic that I have is have a glow in the dark Venom comic of Venom's face. And I would put it in my roommate's room and just scare the hell out of him. So, you're like, oh my God, you put that comic in my room again. Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, I think Brian, you're probably the DC expert. Although I've read my fair share of DC. I know Curtis probably has as well. So you're probably going to have the most comic related stuff, but we're all movie guys. We all like movies. So I guess I'll just start off by give some starting ideas and then we'll go from there. I enjoyed this. I liked this better than the original. I feel like that's not a controversial thing to say, but maybe it is. So I'm going to see if anyone else out there thought this was worse than the original.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
I think it's a much better, much more well-constructed film. I should also just, caveat here and putting all my cards on the table. I've not historically been a fan of Mr. Snider. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that up front. Brian, you're more of a fan of his work. I didn't hate any of his films. I think he's a visual genius. I think when it comes to visual storytelling, he may be one of the best out there, probably, you know, the best of this generation. I get real, I shouldn't say, I don't want to say angry, but I have a lot of problems with some of the storytelling, that the way that it goes. And that's been for two reasons. One is I did not like the liberties he took with some of the DC storylines and characters, which I think a lot of people had problems with. But also, his films, at least in terms of these DC films, for me, have been so cluttered and confusing that I found them very irritating. And I'm at a point now where, like, how do I put this? I love, well, I shouldn't say I love, but I've always enjoyed Quentin Tarantino. This is going to sound like a weird point, but I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
I've always loved Quentin Tarantino films, okay? And I'm a big fan of Pulp Fiction and all that kind of stuff. But I kid you not, I feel like since Tarantino hit the movie industry, a film can't tell a fucking straight narrative. Like, it has to have, like, flashbacks and flash forwards. It has to be, like, non-linear, and it can't just, and, like, I'm at the point where it's just nauseating. Like, can someone just tell the story in order? Like, I'm here to see Batman and Superman blow shit up. Like, I don't need it to be, like, this overly intricate, like, thing. And I guess, you know, I get it. Like, maybe there was this pressure to sort of build a universe and sort of have these Easter eggs and not sort of blow your wad on the first film or second film. And maybe this time around he's like, hey, well, they're letting me go back, I might as well tell the story, just lay it out there. And that's, I think, what I like best about this, is it just sort of was like, all right, I'm just going to tell the story straightforward. So, thoughts? Someone chime in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Curtis.
Why am I going? This is your
I don't know.
time.
You said, I thought you were, I'm trying to be a gracious host.
Okay. Well, I can't say I disagree with much of what Brad said. I mean, he might have went a little too hard on the everybody's trying to be like Tarantino thing, but like, but like everything else you said, I'm pretty much in agreement with. Like, I don't think it's unfair to say that Snyder can't carry a narrative.
What did you think of the first version of it, Curtis? The non-Snyder cut, the Joss Whedon cut, should we call it that?
The Whedon cut, yeah.
Whedon cut.
The Justice League, as some people are saying. It's you know, it's whatever. It exists. I won't say it's like the worst thing I've ever seen, but obviously it's a coddled mess. Yeah, I didn't particularly care for it, but I didn't care for any of the other stuff they were doing beforehand. So it's like whatever. It was just a big whatever.
Yeah.
But this one for me is just like I like it better, but I still struggle to call it a good movie because it's 4 hours long.
Well, if
treat
Brad,
it like a mini series. I have a toddler at home, so I can't ever watch even a normal film straight through. I have to watch everything in like segments. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll just treat it like it's like 5 episodes, and it was great.
So that brings a good point. But first, to Curtis's point, I didn't tell you in advance. The goal is to actually do an over 4 hour podcast about the movie. So we actually talk about it more than that. But okay. But no, I think, Brad, people our age, especially ones with kids, we talked about whether or not this conversation would even be topical anymore because it's been some weeks since it came out, and it's not, it's not as buzzworthy right now as it was, when it first dropped. But I think there's a lot of people probably our age, especially ones with kids, who a 4 hour movie, they may be just getting to it or maybe still working their way through it. Yeah. So to your point about Zack Snyder, though, and I want to hear Caleb's opinion about this because he and I have had a lot of conversations in the past that we both really like Zack Snyder. I love The Watchmen. I think from the visual point of view, like you said, I agree with that. But at the same time, there's something like Sucker Punch, which doesn't really have much of a story. It's just a lot of visuals and action, which honestly is cool and you can enjoy it for what it is. But if you go into it expecting like something deeper, you're not going to get that. So, if it was me making a movie with these DC characters, it wouldn't be this. But, I feel like he started it off with the Man of Steel, which I thought was great for the most part. It wasn't perfect, but it was very good. And then Batman v Superman is really where people just hated it. The director's cut version, I think, does add some to the story. It adds some extra little bits of story and backstory. But again, it's like the mainstream audience might not really want to invest the time in that. Or certainly something like this. I think a lot of people are probably going into this one just because they heard about it and they sort of want to see what the fuss is about. And if that's the reason you're going into it, I'm not really sure you're going to really enjoy it that much. But for the people who at least wanted to see where his story was going, or at least wanted to see sort of the payoffs for what he set up, then, it meant a lot to be able to actually watch it and see that, to be able to see Darkseid, who wasn't even in the first movie or the original version, to see, the Cyborg story, the Flash. Those characters were pretty much cut out of the Whedon version. So should it be a 4-hour movie? I don't know. I guess it just depends, like, who is the movie for? That's kind of my take on it. So I feel like it was sort of for me because I wanted to see whatever it was that he wanted to do. So I didn't mind watching it for 4 hours. But anybody else who's like, well, I already saw this movie once. Why do I need to see a 4-hour version that changes some things? Maybe better, maybe less funny, whatever. It might not really be for them. But I like to hear from our other guys.
Yeah, it's when it comes down to like Snyder, my big introduction of him was probably Watchmen. And I remember as a kid, I was a young guy.
Caleb's like 17 right now, actually. So he was like,
I was like 3,
Yeah. It's pretty dark for a 3-year-old.
Oh,
there it is.
Beautiful,
Yes.
man. Growing up with, I didn't grow up with the graphic novel. I've never heard of Watchmen before Zack Snyder brought it to the big screen. And it was, I remember watching it in theaters, and this is the original cut, not the director's cut, which is even far greater, in my opinion. But, that was my introduction to Zack Snyder. And to me, the movie was just perfection. Like, it was like it felt like they weren't reading from the script. They were just reading from the graphic novel itself. Because at the time, I didn't read the graphic novel. And, it's just page by page. It was different. And I remember people just hating it. And it didn't even do that great in theaters. Like, it wasn't a blockbuster hit or nothing like that. And I don't know what they called it. I think, they called it blockbuster then. But yeah, and then, Man of Steel. Man of Steel was just, I remember when it released and people were like, oh, it's dark. Superman would never do most of these things. And, my perspective of it at the time was, Superman is not Superman. He's Clark Kent becoming Superman. And he's still a young guy. Like, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things they don't want to do. And, it was just, the narrative of Snyder in that was pretty great. But I will say, I do absolutely agree when it comes down to story-wise, Zach needs help. I will say now, I mean, going to Justice League, to me, I mean, I don't give any movie 10 out of 10, but it was everything that I wanted it to be. Every little thing, watching it, I knew immediately it was Zack Snyder. The very first scene, the first opening, I was like, this is a Snyder movie.
Well, he does. It's not like he's keeping it a secret in that.
No. But watching, I mean, honestly, the very first scene of Justice League 2017, I thought was amazing with the parademons and all. Like, how he's like, fear, But after that, I was like, okay, this is I don't know what's going on here, and I don't know who this, who directed this, and but I was very pleased with Snyder coming back to doing Justice League, and giving the fans, like Brian said, the people who really wanted to see, people who really invested into this, the version that we deserved, and I think it was amazing because they didn't really do a lot of reshoots. There was only pretty much, I think it was like two scenes or 3 minutes of the movie that was actually for part of the reshoots, but for what we got, I very much enjoyed it, and that's my take.
What about you, Charlie?
Well, Brad, I'm gonna have to be on your side with this one. I'm not a huge Zack Snyder fan. I was not in the theatrical cut when I saw Watchmen in theaters. They were doing a sale for Batman versus Superman. Buy a DC movie at Best Buy and get a free ticket for that movie. And I bought the director's cut steelbook of Watchmen. And I did love that version. It's very much like Batman versus Superman. It's intended to be a 3-hour movie, and they cut it to be a 2.5-hour movie. Why they did that, I have no idea. But yeah, as for Justice League, I did very much enjoy this movie. In my opinion, I don't feel like a movie should go more than 3 hours or just over 3 hours. That's just personally how I feel. There were 1 or 2 scenes that I might have cut from Justice League Snyder Cut, but like Caleb had told me after we finished watching it for 4 hours straight, and then we watched Godzilla versus Kong prior, so that was 6 hours worth of film.
What the hell? Were y'all on all the cocaine? Like, what were y'all doing?
We destroyed that day when it came to binging. It was insane.
Yeah.
I came in from Shreveport to visit the family and to visit Caleb, and we had a good time. But I thought Snyder Cut was a good movie. I could not give it a perfect 10, but I did very much enjoy it. I'm glad that he was able to make his envisioned piece of a film. So that's how I feel about that.
So I'm really curious, Curtis, because you had the Watchmen like right there. You pulled it right out.
Yeah, I'm right next to my bookshelf with
and,
all my comic books.
Yeah, so just because it's come up several times, how did you feel about the Watchmen movie?
Well, at the time when I first saw it, now granted, I haven't seen the director's cut of it.
Much better.
No, I'm okay, but also only have a certain amount of time in my life.
We all do.
I've already devoted too much time to Snyder. So initially, I kind of was like, okay, that's a thing. But then in trying to rewatch it again, I realized he handles. It's like a recurring theme for me with Snyder. Like, he handles visuals very well, and I feel like a lot of the subtext was not there. Because Watchmen is a big deal for like deconstructionist, superhero stuff, and I feel like it just went straight narrative on that one, and it kind of missed a lot. So that's where I was with that.
I feel the same way. I think with Snyder, he's like that kind of person who like he has too many ideas. To a fault, and I feel like he actually does better when his scope is limited. You guys have talked a lot about Watchmen. My first major interaction with Snyder was actually the movie 300, which is also a comic book film, and to me that's the perfect comic film for Snyder because it totally relies on visuals. The story is simple. Hey, we're a bunch of big buff guys. We're gonna block a hole. That's the story. Like, that's the whole story. Like, there's just a bunch of 300 guys trying to stop that guy from getting through, a mountain pass. That's all Snyder needs. Okay, that's all you got, Zach. Just make it cool. And he killed it. He knocked that film out of the park. But that's because there's almost no story there. It's literally just visuals.
I also like his version of Dawn of the Dead. If I'm going to be
Thank
fair.
you.
I like that.
Thank you. That was really the first time that I paid attention to who he was, because Dawn of the Dead, the original Romero one, is one of my all-time favorite films, certainly in the horror genre for sure. And the fact that when that was remade, that was still early or maybe a little bit before everything was being remade. like right now it's like, oh, a remake, like what hasn't been remade already? I mean, they're remaking movies that they've already remade at this point. Yeah. But I felt like, and I may be wrong, but at the time, the remakes were still sort of a new idea. And the fact that he did, or at least they weren't overdone, and the fact that he chose Dawn of the Dead, I was like, oh, this is a guy to pay attention to because he must have good taste in, you know, movies if this is the kind of thing he would want to do. And he did a really good job of it, sort of making it more modern, telling the same story, but in a slightly different way. I thought it was really excellent as far as a remake goes. And so for me, from him going to that into a lot of these comic book movies, especially the DC ones, you know, I thought was great. But I agree with Brad 100%. And I think you and I, Brad, have kind of had this conversation too. I think like if Zack Snyder could actually like tell the full story that he had in his brain, this would have to be like so many movies or miniseries or something. And there would probably be very few people who would actually want to sit through the whole thing. Cause I think it is like an overload of ideas. And I think that's the problem. If I have to give this movie a fault, and really any of his DC movies, it's that he's got so many sort of threads going that he's leaving open, which is sort of great for fans, but you always wonder, like, is there going to be a payoff, or is he going to get back around to it? And clearly we thought he never would until they let him do this version. I'm also curious, Curtis, what you thought of, we all agree this version is better, but did you feel like the Whedon version was just trying way too hard to be a Marvel movie, you being our in-house Marvel man?
No. I understood what the situation was going into that movie and how, you know, all the controversy behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. I kind of realized very early on that this a movie that was going to make a lot of sense narratively. Like I just knew, like, okay, they're reshooting a lot of stuff. It's going to be chopped up and rewritten because of the circumstances, and they're still trying to make this deadline. So I wasn't shocked by what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you know, the mustache gate didn't help.
No, that was the worst. I mean, honestly, if that, to me, my opinion, if we didn't have the mustache issue, it may not have been hated on as much as it was. I mean, we probably just would have watched it and been like, okay, it had some cool scenes. It was a little funnier, whatever, and moved on. But that was sort of the beginning of the end for it.
I actually read some. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Good, Caleb.
I was going to say I actually read something today where they accidentally almost released the Snyder Cut with the "You Smell Good" moment when Lois and Clark are reunited at the farm, and she says that. They said like they were in the editing room or something on the last like week or two, and I think it was Deborah or maybe Zach. They were watching it, and they're like, "That's not my line." You know, they forgot to take it out, apparently, the whole scene. And they're like, you need to take this out immediately.
Take out Whedon's creeper in the line.
You smell good. I didn't before. Jeez, man.
I imagine there's probably things like that happen all the time. It's so interesting as you learn more about the backstories of these films and just kind of how things fall apart. And it's hard to know who to blame, you know, too, because sometimes you blame an actor or a director, and then you find out that really it was completely out of their control. So it is an interesting, I guess, dilemma when you have so many hands in the pot. I will say for this, I mean, I think we've talked about Snyder and some of his other films quite a bit. I do want to bring it back to Justice League because there was a few talking points that I had specific to this film that I wanted to mention. So I'm going to mention what they are, so in case I forget, because I'm drinking bourbon, you guys can remind me. I want to come back to one thing is talking about Cyborg's narrative in this story arc, because I think that's important. I also want to come back to this kind of multiverse thing that comes out within this film that's more clear. But before I get to that, I will say I think for me at least, one of the things that helped this film, maybe I don't want to say unintentionally, but it was just sort of a matter of circumstance, is the fact that to take it back to the Marvel, and I'm not trying to compare or contrast. I know everyone out there has preferences, but I do think in hindsight, the fact that Marvel started their sort of universe out with individual films first before they created their like Avengers films, I think in the long run that helped audiences. I think there's something about the human brain where if you just introduce too many characters in one film, it's just overwhelming. And that gets back to Snyder sometimes having like too big of a grandiose idea of how he wants to paint his picture. Or he just has too many moving pieces. And I do think the fact that this Snyder cut has now come back, even though the original film was obviously released a while ago. At this point in this drop, we've had an Aquaman film, we've had 2 Wonder Woman films, and I think that at that point in time, those actors in those roles have sort of established that character, so it's not so new. And therefore, I almost noticed that they didn't spend as much time on Wonder Woman and Aquaman as they did on Cyborg and Flash, but that made sense because at this point in the DC universe, people have seen those other films. And I think that this film actually benefited from that. And I know that DC didn't just want to like do what Marvel did exactly, but in hindsight, I think that kind of worked. So I don't know what you guys thought about that. What do you think?
I agree. Definitely. You have to just start in one path and then go boom, 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 and then move on. Then you have the big hurrah, and that would have been Justice League. Just like, that was with Avengers, with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. You have to build a foundation before you can, put the castle on top, so to speak. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would have been so ready to accept Chris Evans as Captain America or Chris Hemsworth as Thor had I not seen those other movies, because I wouldn't have even known who those actors were at that point in time. They had done other things, but having seen them in those roles and being like, oh wow, like this, like Chris Hemsworth is Thor. You know what I mean? Like he had become that in my brain. So when I saw him on Avengers, it was like, yeah, there's Thor. And the same thing with like Captain America, whereas when I'm like seeing Wonder Woman for the first time, or I'm seeing like Aquaman, which Snyder kind of put a different spin on Aquaman, right? A cool one by bringing in Momoa, but you kind of had to like get used to it. But because I had seen the 3-hour Aquaman film, I'm like, yeah, Momoa's Aquaman. I got it. He's got it. He's got the tattoos. Right. What did you think, Brian? Do you think that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, especially watching so for example, my wife watches a lot of these movies, most of them with me, because she, tries to spend time with me. So that's nice.
How sweet of her.
Right? But I don't know if she enjoys them for what they are, but she certainly isn't like a comic book person. But she's learned a lot because we watch a lot of like the Arrowverse shows and those kinds of things, and a lot of these movies. And she really enjoyed Justice League. I mean, she didn't love it. She thought it was long, and she thought some of it, like, she kind of still likes the Flash on TV, I think maybe better than this Flash or whatever. But that's because we've watched, several seasons of it. So that's just
because she got good ass sense. That's why it is.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But anyways, I think your point is right on, that the fact that you've kind of, by the time we got to this movie, we were already familiar with those other characters because we had seen Aquaman, we had seen 2 Wonder Woman movies. And this film really focused on Cyborg, so it gave more time to sort of learn that character because maybe you didn't know him as well. But I also think it's really interesting seeing how, because technically this movie came out before the Wonder Woman movie, if I remember, and the Aquaman movie. Yeah. So this was actually planned to set those movies up. And it was really interesting to me to see how it set them up and then sort of how that setup changed. For example, like, Mira, like Amber Heard being British in the Zack Snyder version, whereas she's not in the Aquaman movie, stuff like that. that, you know, it was fine. I don't really care one way or another, but it's just interesting to see like how this movie had planned to set those movies up. And it makes me wonder how those movies would have maybe gone differently if it had followed, you know, this movie versus the other one.
Yeah, and I mean, as a comic book guy, I get like the cameo. You know, that's like big in comics, right? Is you like drop a character in, there's like a first appearance. It's like usually a cameo, and then eventually that character gets built in. That works in comics where you're reading something every month for a long period of time. So I kind of, there's a part of me who sort of appreciated that Snyder kind of dropped those characters in that way. But from a movie standpoint, it just was too much. It just was too much. So I felt like, you know, in hindsight, they would have been better suited to just give these people their own film, establish them, and then, you know, make the film you want. Maybe it wouldn't have had to been 4 hours if they had done it that way as well.
Or maybe
Zack Snyder don't make short movies.
That's right.
It should have been like 8 hours, man. It's too short.
I will say my wife liked this movie too. I watched it with her, and she really enjoyed this, and she said she liked it better than any of the Marvel films. She tends to like DC more anyways.
Tell Lindsay she's tripping. I'm gonna tell her I said that.
I will. I had to remind her, I'm like, well, hon, you're forgetting about like this movie. And she's like, yeah, those were good. But she was meaning, I guess, more like the like in-game film. I think was probably the most recent one she watched, and I kind of had to give her that. Like, I really liked, you know, the Infinity War, but the in-game I wasn't mad crazy about. So, but anyway, she enjoyed it too, and that said something as well for me, because I think it connected with a broader scale audience, which is something that historically DC's usually been better at anyways. I mean, DC's always been a little bit more broad scale, and very sort of like classic in their superhero approach. Marvel was always kind of the wild card, you know, where they sort of just like, yeah, we're gonna do something crazy and see what happens, you know. And so I don't know. I felt like this film, at least experientially, seemed to appeal to a broader audience. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. When it comes down to, you know, I think, I mean, I specifically think that it was made for people, like I said, who wanted to see it. But anybody, you know, if there's anybody in the world who hasn't seen Justice League 2017, you know, this is a movie that, you know, of course, I think anybody would recommend seeing. But I mean, it's really interesting when it comes down to oh my goodness. But it's really interesting, you know, because for me, when it came down to like watching these Marvel movies and watching DC, I was always more into the DC movies. I mean, it's not something I can really pinpoint, I guess. You know, I was more, as a kid, I was more invested into Batman and Superman and, you know, all these people. And I guess maybe that's a major reason why. You know, but I also wasn't, you know, I'm whenever I do reviews for movies, you know, we'll go see a movie, but I'm always very careful about trying to give it a score immediately, because after 2 or 3 days, I start seeing the flaws. You know, I might say, oh, this is an 8. And then 3 days later, I'm like, man, this is a 4.4, dude. Like, you know, so I'm always very careful when like, you know, trying to scale movies. And, you know, Endgame, I liked at first. I wasn't crazy about it, but I was like, okay, you know, it's a good little ending. But after some time, like 24 hours, my my judgment kind of changed on that, you know. But like with Justice League, you know, the Snyder Cut, you know, I was I was like, wow, this is great for me. You know, this is everything I wanted to see. And even thinking, you know, now, I mean, 2-3 weeks later, my view hasn't changed from that, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of held its weight. Let's talk about while we got some time. So I want to talk about the multiverse thing, because we clearly see that, and a lot of the things that I'm seeing online that people really liked about this movie was this sort of end cap with Batman and the Joker, where they brought back what's his name?
Jared Leto.
Thank you, Jared Leto as the Joker.
What's his name? I'm fine with that.
Wow.
Okay. But it definitely introduced this whole idea of, a multiverse, multiple universes. And I liked that because one of my biggest criticisms of all of Snyder's movies is that, especially Man of Steel, it wasn't, again, that I didn't think it wasn't visually stunning, but it just didn't represent Superman as I thought of Superman. But when you play the multiverse card, all of a sudden you can realize, well, there's infinite number of different Supermans. This is his version of that story. So it doesn't have to fit the typical concept of Superman. And for whatever reason, as stupid as that is, it sort of like made it okay for me, like in a way that's like, oh, okay. So, I don't have to be so critical of how this was so divergent from some of these characters I loved, or how it didn't really meet my expectation of how I thought these characters should look on film, because I now accept them as one version amongst many versions. And there's Batman as Affleck, what they call him, Batfleck. But there's also Michael Keaton, and there's also Christian Bale, and all of those are different variations of Batman. So that's fine. And we can look at the Henry Cavill Superman the same way. And I always thought Henry Cavill was a great Superman in person. I just didn't like that narrative. Yeah. I didn't like the Snyder narrative of Superman. I didn't like the fact that, Lois Lane is right out the bat knows he's Superman. And she didn't just, not that Amy Adams is a bad actress. She's a great actress. But to me, she didn't personify Lois Lane. I didn't like the fact that he was killing people. And there was other weird narrative things that just didn't make sense to me. Like the fact that he watches his father die in the film because he wants to keep his identity. But then later he's people are just finding out who he is. It's like, well, if you're like that, those two things are inconsistent. So I have all kinds of problems with just that the narrative didn't make sense in my head. But then I'm like, okay, if I just accept that this is not the narrative that I grew up in, it's another universe potentially, it alleviated a lot of my inner anxiety about this film. So I don't know what you guys thought about that. And maybe that was always his intent. Maybe it was always there. He just was kind of saving that card for the end. And he never got to reveal it. And so he did it here. But what did you think about the idea of maybe this is potentially another universe or another narrative?
Well, I'll say I think that's exactly what the intention was. I mean, they even I made a brief mention to the Arrowverse for what it is. It's fine. I enjoy it for what it is, but I get it. It's trashy teenage TV, but it's CW. But you know what? They've done some interesting things with it.
It's
the
not
fact
worse
that
than Ezra Miller. You stop that, Caleb. You stop it right now. He's doing a running motion. I don't take kindly to that.
I think it's really cool how they've sort of tried to represent some of the big DC Comics moments in the TV shows with the crossovers that they've done on TV. Like the fact that they did a version of Crisis on Infinite Earths with an anti-monitor and no, yeah.
Dude, oh my God, the Batman thing with Kevin Conroy where they completely buried Batman, and then the monitor or whatever tells Batwoman, "You're the real Bat." I'm just like, are you serious?
Again, though,
not even on the show anymore.
Right, I know. Again, though, I think that all sort of plays into it's just a different version, and they even played into that to the point where I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but Ezra Miller actually showed up on the Flash TV show.
What?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but anyways, I thought that was completely unexpected, and it was really cool at the time because it's okay, they've sort of put out there these things coexist intentionally, and that's how it was sort of meant to be. And what bugs me about it really more than anything, though, and I don't think anybody will disagree with this, is a lot of these ideas DC did first, or sort of came up with the idea or invented them in the comics, but Marvel's just done them so much better in their TV and movies to the point where it's like, you know, you'd think Darkseid was like a ripoff of Thanos, not knowing like it's the other way around.
That's right.
Or, you know, it's going to be interesting that there's a Flash movie that's going to be based on Flashpoint, which sort of introduces the idea of the multiverses in DC. Yet in Spider-Man, they're doing Spider-Verse like kind of at the same time with characters that have already been established that people sort of already like or love. So it's just like, I can see it going poorly for DC again, even though it was their concept, because they haven't been able to really get it right, or they haven't been able to present it in such a way that like it clicks with the mainstream audience. So any
For sure. Yeah, just for some comic geeks out there, just what Brian's referencing, I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, Thanos was actually created intentionally to be a sort of parallel in the Marvel universe of Darkseid. And you even have things like the Infinity Stones in the Mother Boxes. But I mean, it goes even deeper than that. I mean, even Deadpool, you know, Wade Wilson was an intentional spoof off of Slade Wilson, right? So, I mean, DC in the comics was usually ahead of the curve, but because of the Marvel universe successfully doing these things in film and television, a lot of pop culture doesn't realize this. And if I'm being fully honest on this, I do think some of that has to do with the fact that Kevin Feige basically was like the one guy in total control of everything. You know, when Disney bought Marvel, they're just like, yeah, we don't know comics, like whatever you guys want to do. And they basically just put him in charge of it. And so you kind of just had like one person with a vision creating it. And I think they kind of tried to do that with Snyder, but they didn't, because he was in a directorial place rather than a production place. And as a result of that, you had all these producers and investors and corporate people like, no, we don't, and it just kind of got like too many, you know, roosters in the hen house or whatever, and it just never worked. But it is unfortunate, because I do agree, even as a Marvel lover, and I'm sure Curtis would have things to say about this as well. You know, I'm more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy. I have to admit that on a lot of these things, DC was at the forefront in the comics, even though they haven't been able to do it in films. So, what do you think, Curtis?
Yeah, you're painting me as like the Marvel guy just because I do a Marvel podcast, but like Marvel stuff really for me didn't come until later. Like DC's the stuff I grew up with. You know, Superman's my favorite hero. He's the archetype. He's the thing, and so that was that was also the thing that set me against Snyder, because spoiler alert, not that big of a fan of Man of Steel. So yeah. You know, you set the tone that way, and I'm like, okay, well I'm not feeling that. Like, I was so excited to see that movie. I got invited to a premiere for that movie. I saw that movie maybe 3 weeks early, and I had to go to Miami, so that's like an hour drive. And you know, me and
Curtis
my friend
put
Brian.
In work.
Yeah, we went and drove an hour to go see that movie, and then I was all stoked. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh, okay. Trying to psych myself up to think I liked the movie, you know? So that's what set the whole tone for me. And so I just think he doesn't, you know, now in hindsight now we have I don't know, this movie came out on streaming, and maybe the way we're consuming it, I can kind of be like, okay, well, this is his version of the characters, and those don't have to be the definitive thing. So I can kind of deal with it. But at the time when it was seeming like, okay, these were the versions of the characters I'm going to have to watch over and over, I was not into it.
Yeah, that's how I was too. Yeah, I was.
So do you think we've kind of retconned the idea that like, oh, it's fine because it's just a version, whereas at the time it was like this was supposed to be like the version?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. But I think I'm more okay with it. And I will say too, it made me rethink the Green Lantern film as well. And I had seen Ryan Reynolds posted something on Instagram where he was actually saying he was going to do something he's never done before, which is he's going to watch the Green Lantern film. And he actually had put like a promotional ad for an Aviation Gin Green Lantern based drink. So I was thinking like Snyder was going to tie that in too. I was like really like hopeful, thinking there was going to be like a Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern cameo in this drop. And they had Martian Manhunter, but no Green Lantern. So I was a little disappointed. But the
Well, that Green Lantern
Martian
was-
Manhunter was cool to see that.
The Green
Sorry, go ahead,
Lantern was
Curtis.
supposed to be John Stewart. It was supposed to
Yeah.
be John Stewart.
Yeah,
And
well, it was more.
Washington.
Yeah, it was more just the fact that Ryan Reynolds actually like said something Green Lantern based that I just wondered. And I know that he wasn't originally intended, but I wondered like, oh, well, it's a recut. Like maybe they thought, well, let's try to salvage this film too, and just say, hey, this is also in this universe. But anyways, I want to bring it back before we end this and close it out. I do want to talk about the Cyborg storyline. I think that's important because, at least from what I've seen online, and I haven't delved into this deeply, but it seems like there was some bad blood initially for the actor who played Cyborg. Very, very disappointed with the film. And now going back and watching this version, I see why. Because if you watch the original version, he was a very minor character. Whereas in this cut, he's maybe the most important character in the whole story arc. And I did feel like that was maybe in some ways truer to some of the DC comics that I've read in terms of Cyborg's importance in that world. But I know, Brian, you're a huge Cyborg fan. You're our in-house DC guy. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Cyborg story arc in this cut.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. I mean, I would totally be down for a Cyborg movie with Ray Fisher. It's never going to happen at this point. At least I don't think it will. Never. But I thought he was fantastic. I thought of all the sort of different weird maybe takes on DC characters. I mean, it's pretty easy to see like what worked and what didn't. I mean, I think, like you said, with Cavill as Superman, he had the right look, but maybe the story wasn't there. The same might be said with Ben Affleck. I actually thought Ben Affleck made a pretty good Batman. The scenes where he was sort of fighting more at doing actually Batman stuff at the end of Batman v Superman, I thought were really cool. I think a standalone movie could have been possibly good. I do think Ben Affleck's a pretty good director. He usually is good with narrative. So I do wish we could have seen that. The Wonder Woman movie was great. The first one, at least. The second one was kind of hot garbage, but at the same time, like kind of like if you're drunk, it's really pretty good. And Momoa, the Aquaman was I thought very good. I enjoyed it. We'll see what the Flash is, but it's unfortunate that we aren't going to get more Cyborg. In a way, this was probably his film, and I'm glad it was the focus because I think he was probably the strongest character in the movie, but I think the movie was sort of designed to be that way.
This Cyborg is a hell of a lot better than that Doom Patrol Cyborg. That Cyborg knows the hell out of me.
But Doom Patrol is pretty amazing.
It is. Cyborg trash.
Yeah. It's a fair point.
Cyborg. This is broke Cyborg.
What are you saying, Curtis? I can't.
I'm saying I don't feel that way. I much prefer the Doom Patrol Cyborg, but that's
really what is it you like about it?
I would like to hear this. I'm not saying I prefer or don't prefer. I love Doom Patrol, but it's just a different take on the character. But I want to hear this.
Oh well, that character actually has personality. This one is like kind of like wet wallpaper or whatever. And I guess he says "fuck" one time, so I guess that makes him cool. I don't know. But yeah, I've talked too much. You guys,
no, you haven't.
And you guys know Caleb and Charlton. They need to talk a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead,
man. To me, Cyborg, from the get-go, Snyder had said, he's the heart of the movie, and I mean, let's just take Cyborg out. Like, we have another incomplete movie, and when it came down to Cyborg, like I really, I connected with it because I'm not a teenager like Brian says, but he's a moody teenager. He's mad at the world. He's mad about who he is as a person because he didn't have a say so and getting that death that that was bound to happen, but instead his father said I'm not going to lose you too, so I'm just gonna make you a machine, And I thought that was really cool because, you know, I know a lot of people are angry about, oh, he's just mad. And I'm like, wouldn't you? You know? But I really feel for Ray Fisher in the situation because it's still ongoing. Every week we're getting more news about, you know, something that happened. And I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago. And, you know, he had done another interview or something saying more claims. And, you know, I really just feel terrible because me personally, I very much enjoyed the Cyborg, Ray Fisher's Cyborg. And of course, you know, I'm all about Ben Affleck being Batman because I think he's pretty fire.
And shout out to Joe Morton for playing the same character he played in Terminator 2. Did anyone else pick that up?
Joe Morton is my MVP of the movie because like
he played the exact same role as he was in Terminator 2.
Why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell us what you're referring to?
Terminator
Miles
2.
Dyson.
Yeah, he's Miles Dyson. You know, he's
Miles
the guy
Dyson.
the robot that he's the one who has to destroy the technology. And, you know, they go to his lab and he's holding the weight. He's like, he drops it. The building blows up. It's the same ending. It's the same movie. I was like, this is Terminator 2.
But I mean, honestly, if you were going to make a movie, and you're like, who should be Cyborg's dad?
Yes.
Well, who would? I mean, who wouldn't pick him? I don't know. That's my take. But
I'm a big fan of him, by the way.
Yeah, he's the shit.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
Charlton, what do you think? Cyborg storyline.
I thought it was a very well written, you know, emotional part of the movie. I mean, you know, like Caleb was saying, it's a kid that he had everything, you know, football scholarship, was going to make it big, and then something awful just happened to him. And that's something that can relate to athletes or, you know, people in the world. I mean, Christopher Reeves had the same thing, man. I mean, you know, it was great to see him as Superman. And then, you know, you're watching Smallville a couple years down the line and you see him in a wheelchair and he's just the scientist guy that you just can't move. And,
Man.
you know, I mean, it's sad, but it is what it is. You just got to, you know, well, as Tony Montana would say, take life by the balls and, you know, do what you can. But, you know, he had his little redemption story. He got to save the world. So, you know, that was good. Good for him, you know.
Okay, I have a question. While we're on the cyborg stuff, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, the climax of the movie revolves around him trying to get it inside the mother box. Did he fuck the mother box at the end or not? Like, I'm really confused.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
I'm gonna say maybe.
Yeah, maybe. That seems like
I mean, that's certainly
He doesn't have those parts anymore.
It's called a mother box.
he's like, I need your momentum to get inside the box. So, how am I? What am I supposed to make?
Are you? See, now you're really recontextualizing the film for me as the fact that Flash and Cyborg were like, you know, it was like some sort of threesome with the mother box.
That damn box.
That's what it really came down to. That's what it really came down to.
I didn't think that far into it.
Yeah,
You guys are dirty.
No pun intended.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here.
I was just gonna say, Curtis, that's exactly why you're
You
here.
went really deep with it, man.
I like that interpretation. I think that's a good multiverse interpretation. Like we need Cyborg.
See, all of us white boys are trying to like talk about like the redemption and how it was a powerful story, and you're just like, no, he was just fucking that mother box.
Fucking the box because that's the only way the story makes sense to me.
Yeah, I guess it changes my perspective about the whole storyline.
Wow, you know, there's gonna be a porno of that, right?
Of course.
It already exists.
There probably already is. Yeah,
It's being made right now.
yeah.
Well, okay, no, but seriously, while we're on the mother box subject, Brian, has there been interpretations of the mother box being like gigantic boxes? I'm more familiar with them being like little remote control computer things. So, like, what's your opinion about like this version?
Okay. So Brad's kind of painted me as the DC Comics expert, which isn't quite true. I certainly have a history
about everybody.
I do have a history with it, so I can certainly speak to it, but I do know that there have been sort of versions of it like this. Mm-hmm. In fact, some of the modern reinterpretation, like the whole idea of the fact that like the mother box is sort of part of Cyborg. That is sort of in the comics interpretation, like more as a more modern idea. And I think that's pretty cool, actually. It's a way to sort of make him unique. Not that he's not already, but just, you know, even kind of more unique, tied in with the New Gods and all that. So I have seen sort of that kind of idea of it. I've read a lot of the Jack Kirby New Gods comics and stuff like that. The mother box was definitely more abstract, I guess might be a word for it, than just like these boxes that everybody had.
I think, see, to me, I have like little problems like that.
Sure.
With it. Like, I'm like, okay, well, the thing in the comic is more interesting. Why change it?
Right.
And so that's where I get kind of stuck up on things.
If I have to make a complaint on this topic, it's so when I was really hardcore into comics as sort of a teenager, college student, a lot of what I was into at the time was the whole Death of Superman story arc. That was what was popular at my age at the time. And, you know, say what you will about comics at the time and the fact that things were kind of starting to go downhill in a lot of ways with these sort of event comics. Maybe it started there and continued. But, you know, I, as a comics fan, had a real problem with the way they sort of used the mother box to revive Superman. Even my wife was kind of like, wait, so they're just going to put him in this goo? Like, where are they? And they're zapping him with the box. And like, it was very, I don't know. It really made no sense at all to me. Like, what is this? Like, I don't even understand this, but okay, we're just going to accept, like, here's this box. It's the MacGuffin. And we got this pool from the ship and we're going to put him in there and then Flash is going to run. And of course that's going to bring somebody back from the dead. Like,
and also give you future visions.
Right. So I'm with you 100%.
Actually, because I hated that whole Superman, you know, bringing back from the dead story arc in the first film. And I think the fact that they kind of stuck with it in the second film, I paid attention to all the things I liked that they did better, that I kind of just like flushed that even happened. Oh, they're still doing this? Okay, flush. Let's just concentrate on what's good, because that was horrendous. That was a horrendous way to bring back Superman. And the fact that you just reminded me of it kind of makes me angry. Because I think I may have just sort of washed it out when I rewatched the Snyder Cut. I was just like, what? Flush. Oh, there's Flash and Cyborg again. Oh, he's fucking the mother box. This is cool. But no, you're right. I think that there was some stuff like that just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, because you know, I remember Brian and I talking a few years ago or so. I don't know, maybe might have been a month ago. But you know, when Snyder went to that convention and started talking about the Snyder Cut, like this is probably 2 or 3 years ago, what it would have been if Warner Brothers wouldn't have, you know, done everything, whatever. And I remember him saying, like, Superman's revival of him coming back wouldn't even be until like the second movie, you know? So I felt like they threw that mother box revive in there again, but I really don't think that's how Superman would have come back.
Yeah.
And I felt like they just threw it in again.
They wasted the Doomsday character as well, which is a total crap out as well. I hated that too.
I do. And look, I'm a big Batman versus Superman, like, not fighter, but like, I thought it was a great movie, the director's, you know, version of it. But, you know, but yeah, that was just a waste. You know, it was so quick too.
Yeah, and he's a cool character. That's a whole story arc in and of itself that basically
here's
got.
Doomsday.
Yeah,
Bye.
yeah.
And it's really unfortunate that they threw like Doomsday and Steppenwolf and Darkseid. I mean, those aren't unfortunate things. Those are awesome. But like, honestly, seeing like Lex Luthor, who I didn't really care for, you know, Eisenberg as Luthor, but you know, when you saw him with the shaved head and then you saw Deathstroke, I was like, okay, this is actually what I want to see.
Yeah.
You know, like, why didn't we start with them and work our way up towards like New Gods or something? You know, let's start a little bit like something people can wrap their head around. Like, okay, Lex Luthor, he was in Man of Steel. He's angry. He wants revenge. Deathstroke, whatever. I think that would have been a cool version of Deathstroke. I hope it doesn't go away, to be honest. Hope they can do something with it. But like those things made me, I mean, even when I saw the Whedon cut, I sort of fooled myself into thinking that it was okay at the time because I liked like, oh, Aquaman's pretty cool, and Flash and Cyborg, we didn't see him much, but they seem pretty cool. Like, to me, it was meant to be a stepping stone. But like the end of it where they sort of teased like this Legion of Doom idea, that got me more excited more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need like a Mark Zuckerberg and True Blood Werewolf movie.
Oh,
That's all I can think of.
He was a
Like, who's that Mark Zuckerberg and the werewolf guy from True Blood?
He was a were-panther. A were-panther.
I'm sorry, a were.
Right.
Wow, thank you, Curtis. Keeping me on this.
Don't hate on True Blood.
I'm
yeah,
not.
look.
No, I'm telling Brad not to.
I'm not hating. I'm saying I want that movie. I want the Mark Zuckerberg werewolf movie. Where is that?
I used to love True Blood, man. I mean, it went off the deep end and all, but like, it was based in Louisiana, so like, it was, you know, where we're from, and I think they filmed it around Shreveport. I don't know. I don't remember what they said.
True Blood podcast coming up.
Oh snap!
I still need to watch it. Haven't seen it.
I've read the books.
Oh wow. Okay,
I've
well.
never read the books.
So I'm basically a middle-aged woman.
I didn't want to say it out loud.
That's Brian's 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, do you guys have any final thoughts on the Snyderverse, or do we want to give us your overall ratings? I want to leave it. If anyone has any final points they want to make or bring to the table, I want to give them that opportunity first. What do you guys? Any last thoughts?
Release the Synder Cut Part 2.
I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10 if I had to give a rating.
Yeah.
Do you want to see them give him another opportunity if he's into that?
I wouldn't mind seeing some other opportunities at this point. If I understand where they're going, which is Warner Brothers, it sounds like at this point is just like, hey, let's just like, instead of trying to like control it, let's just do like it's more like instead of the less is more, it's the more is less. Kind of like, let's just let I think probably the success of the sort of offshoot Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix, how that was just totally left field, kind of like worked for them. And they're like, hey, wait, this was a huge success. It doesn't really fit anywhere, but it's just like, hey, here's one story of the Joker. So maybe that's our thing. Maybe we just let all these different people make all these different movies and just everyone has a different interpretation. So it could work. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Harley Quinn across like sort of three different, I don't know if they're universes or not at this point, because we had the original Suicide Squad, which was pretty shitty, but you know, I enjoyed her version of the character still.
Yeah. And
then we had the Harley Quinn movie, which I thought was actually pretty good. I think more people should watch that. And then we've got her in the new Suicide Squad, and it's like she's kind of the character that's actually sort of stayed. Like, you're not going to cast Margot Robbie. You're not going to recast Harley Quinn at this point if you don't have to. So, you know, who knows? It's sort of like, people will figure it out. They'll watch the movie and they'll like it or they won't like it. I'm really curious where they're going to go with like the Black Adam movie that The Rock is doing.
Filming today.
Yeah. And the fact that they're bringing in the Justice Society, which they're sort of, I haven't been watching it, but I know the Stargirl show does their own version of the Justice Society. So, you know, I don't know. I'm all for more Justice Society. So I'm cool with that. You know, I'm fine with different versions of it. But to get back to your question, Brad, I would give it, I'd give it half of a Joss Whedon out of one half.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know.
It's entirely, this is how our rating system works.
It's true. That's our favorite rating system.
You're gonna make me take a flight to fight you, Brian.
We make our own rating system for every movie.
I would give this, if I had to rate this movie, I would give it 5 nippled bat suits out of 5.
Oh.
nippled bat suits. I'd give it 5 out of 5 because George Clooney put nipples on the bat suit, as he's articulated many times.
I'm still lost, but good.
He talks about those nipples, I think, more than anybody does.
Yeah.
For those
like,
who are lost, when George Clooney played Batman in that terrible Batman and Robin film, the bat suit got very sort of erotic. It had nipples and a very robust groin area and things like that. So, anyways, that was, yes, there was a lot of that kind of stuff. So, anyway, I give it 5 out of 5 of those. Curtis, how would you rate this film?
All right, so we're gonna give it 6 out of 10. Kal-El knows. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. So disappointed.
Hate. Don't give a damn.
There's always that one.
You could have given it 6 out of 10 Marthas.
That's not in this movie.
That's true. But neither is the nippled bat suit.
No, Kal-El, no. That's stay consistent. That's where we're at.
Nice.
Or you smell good.
Oh, yeah.
At least we didn't have the thirsty Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Instead, she's just pregnant.
Yeah.
Whose baby is it?
He wanted it to be Bruce's.
Yeah. That's right. That's
I don't know if that was so. Let's clarify this.
Mm-hmm.
Did he wanted it to be Bruce's? Because my understanding was it was going to be Clark's. They were just going to name it Bruce, and he was going to be like the next Batman or something.
No,
you're all wrong. It's Cyborg and the mother boxes, baby.
No,
His name's going to be Bruce Box.
Bruce Box.
Yeah. What did you think, Caleb? How would you rate this one?
Honestly, well, for a second, I would say I would love to see a continuation because I think the story should not stop here. Although, we said, not we said, Warner Brothers said a Snyder Cut will never happen. Look where we are today. I mean, so we really, Zack Snyder, months before he said, a part 2 would not come, but he's been on a bunch of podcasts and they're like, what about a second one? He's like, we'll see, maybe, versus not happening now.
Yeah.
So maybe something's in the work. I hope it is. And I hope this time, Zach is able to shoot and produce, direct everything the way he wants to do it, which we all know it's not going to happen. Because even on these reshoots, he wanted to shoot Green Lantern and they said, oh, no, we're not giving you that money. And he threatened to quit, So we know that's not going to happen, but I'm hoping he's able to do just be proud of the movie, But
so,
yeah.
Do you think that? Sorry to interrupt you, but before you finish that idea, thanks. Do you think that they would give him a shot at directing another DC movie? Maybe not a Justice League, maybe in whatever new sort of multiverse thing they're going to do next. Maybe a different character that we haven't even seen before.
I think
Snyder?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that with these stream services now and all these major corporations all vying for attention and all vying for your dollars, if there is a way to make money off it, they'll do it. I'm at that point now. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, if the internet says, hey, we want this, and they know, hey,
definitely,
we can pop this on our stream service and we're going to make a shit ton of money. I don't think at this point they give a shit about the brand as much. I think it's just how do we make money and keep our service competitive. That's where I'm at.
What he said.
Which completely makes sense with the James Gunn, they're doing the James Gunn Suicide Squad, and they're doing a Peacekeeper series for HBO with John Cena, which I've kind of got to say I think might be amazing.
I'm very interesting. I'm not a Cena fan. There's a door in my way. I'm not into all that nonsense, but I will say I have not seen a Suicide Squad trailer, by the way.
No,
well,
I'm not really big. It's
horrible.
Oh, you don't like trailers at all?
No. If something starts playing, thank God I don't have cable, but I have not seen that shark person. I saw a photo or whatever, but I have not seen anything of the trailer, but I would hope, when it comes down to Snyder, Snyder's involved with everything when it comes down to comic movies. So I think he would definitely get a shot of doing something else. But I think also Warner Brothers might be, might say, all right, we learned our lesson with, getting in front of him, and trying to take over this movie. So let's give a little less slack, and actually let him do whatever movie they want him to do.
So yeah, because if he makes another movie, there's no way they can start cutting it.
No.
I mean, after that, that's the one thing. They can't go in and be like, "Oh, Zack Snyder, we're gonna cut your movie again."
Oh,
so
I mean, this might have changed things too. I mean, this could have changed Wonder Woman 2, maybe.
What's your final review of this movie? Because I interrupted you several times.
Yeah, man, what 5-6 times? No. I'm honestly gonna say a 8.7. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's pretty strong
specific.
in movies. Forrest Gump gets an 8.8. So.
Yeah, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah. Kurt's doing the first way. Well, this has been fun. I've enjoyed talking about this. It's good to get different perspectives always. It is a long movie. If you haven't watched it, maybe try it, but break it up. Also, speaking of John Cena, have you heard his rap album? Oh, what?
Basic Thugonomics, man.
Oh no.
That was his first song.
No.
I got some John Cena rap fans on here. Get on Spotify, check that out. This has been Bam the Pod. We've talked a lot about superheroes and Zack Snyder and everything DC and Justice League related. Thanks to everyone for taking time to be on the show. Thanks to our listeners for listening. Hopefully we'll be back with some of these, tandem projects, bringing in some people from various podcasts. Check out the Frickin' Frack Show if you're not already following and listening to them. They got a lot of great stuff out there about 90s boy bands and music. And, check out the Tesseract TV, Curtis's Marvel show, which is really great. It's really closely following that those drops. So hopefully we've introduced you to some new content as well. We're Bam the Pod. Thanks for listening, and peace out.
Peace.